Hi everyone, welcome back to the Stoic Mama. My name is Nadia for anyone who is new to this channel, and today's topic is timers. How are we going to use timers effectively with daily routines for our little ones? And in case you haven't checked out my other two videos around daily routines, there's one around the mechanics of how you come up with your daily routine, what you need to think through, as well a video around an example, kind of how we are doing it in my house. So let's first talk about why timers are actually so important. So imagine you have all your routines figured out, you have your chart set up, and you're ready to go with your little one. Pretty soon you might realize, this takes much longer than you expected. There you are an hour later and your child is still kind of maybe only at the first couple of steps regarding their evening routine, let's say. So this is really why timers are so important. For kids, time is kind of somewhat meaningless, like in itself. So really having that visual reminder of a time goal or like some type of goal they work towards. Hey, let's get this done within the next 10 minutes. Hey, let's get this done within the next 15 minutes. So that is really an important component for daily routines to work. Basically, you need a time box. So in addition to your routine chart and the steps that you want your child to go through, you also need that time element in order for that daily routine to work. Now let's talk about the type of timer I would recommend you use with your daily routines. And I think there are really three key components to think about. It should be big, very easy to see for kids, very visual as a second component. It needs something that visually shows how time passes. And the third component is it should be a type of timer that they easily could set themselves as they kind of get more and more comfortable with using routines in their daily lives. So the timer that I recommend is actually this one here, and I'll be linking to this below. This is the one that we have in my house. So you can see it is really big. You can easily put it on the wall next to your routine charts, and it's, you can't hardly miss it. And then the other component that I really like about this one, it is a very visual timer. So you actually can set the time this way, and it's very easy for a child then to see as the time gets less and less and less. So that is the visual element. I think that is really critical when you're using timer with your little ones. And then the last component, it's very easy to set yourself pretty much. And that's the sound it makes when it's over. Loud enough for everyone to hear. But yeah, so even my 3-year-old, he knows how to set this timer, and obviously he also messes around with it, and then does this da 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 da. So I mean, this is just something that that you might see happening, especially with those little ones. But key thing is they can set it themselves very easily. All right. And then the next question is actually, where do you put those timers, right? And in our case, basically our sons have the first part of their morning routine and their evening routine. Those charts are in their respective bedrooms, so they each have their own bedroom. And then the second part of our morning routine and the afternoon routine is downstairs. So we actually have two timers. So one upstairs where the bedrooms are is placed somewhat centrally, like close to the bathroom where everyone congregates one way or another. So that is one area where we have placed our timer up here. And also, this is very central because right here is my 6-year-old son's bedroom, and then over there is the entrance to the bedroom for my 8-year-old, and then my 3-year-old has his entrance right there. So it is pretty much a centralized location for this timer upstairs for us. All right, so now we're downstairs, and here you see the entrance to our mudroom where everyone exits and enters the house. And here our second part of our morning routines, the charts, as well as the afternoon routines for all 3 kids. And so we place that second timer right here, and that is even a bigger version than the one that I showed you earlier that we have upstairs. So it's very clear for everyone to see how much time is left. Now let's talk about how we're using those timers on a daily basis. So for the first part of our morning routine, which is, everything upstairs, about getting dressed, make your bed, all of that, and then come downstairs, we don't use the timers actually that much, specifically not with my 3-year-old and my 8-year-old. They pretty much, the 3-year-old, we help him along, we get it done together. And then with the 8-year-old, he is pretty self-sufficient. He's hungry, he's motivated to come downstairs. However, with my 6-year-old, he's just someone that does not like to get up in the morning. Who does? So it is really difficult to get him up in the morning. He gets a very bad mood and just doesn't want to do it. So for him, we actually do use the timer. So typically, we give him first a chance to just do it himself. But then if there's just no activity, then we say, okay, we'll put the timer on. This is the time you have. Then breakfast is starting downstairs. So you gotta be ready. So this is how we're using timers for that first part of the morning routine. Now let's talk about the second part of our morning routine, which is downstairs. It's all about having breakfast, getting ready for daycare or school in terms of getting dressed, brush your teeth, whatever we need to do to get ourselves ready to get out of the house. And 8 o'clock is the time by when we have to leave, otherwise we'll be late, so there is no real negotiation around that. So whenever the first kid comes downstairs, what we'll do is actually look at the clocks. So let's say they come down by 7:30 and we'll set the timer for 30 minutes and everyone knows basically, okay, I have 30 minutes or I have whatever that shows me I have left to get ready to be ready to leave for school or for daycare. And our kids also know when 8 o'clock comes around and that timer goes off, that they will have to carry them out to the car, right? In whatever state they might be in, they might have to put their jacket or their shoes on in the car, but we just have to go. And this is really positioned as a natural consequence. This is not a punishment of any sort. It's just like, hey, time is up, we have to go. And if that is of interest to anyone, let me know in the comments and I can post a video about natural consequences and how we use that. We really like that concept versus kind of more of that punishment concept, and I can show you a little bit how we're using what it is and how we're using that with our 3 little boys. Now in the afternoon, what I typically do is I just let them run with it. They tend to be motivated enough to do their charts because they're hungry, and at the end of the chart it's actually snack time. So they know the faster they get it done, the sooner they can actually have a snack. So that tends to be motivation enough, and also there are not that many steps for us in the afternoon, but sometimes, you know, they get a little silly, especially with each other, and then it kind of spiral out of control. And once I hear myself saying more than 3 times, come on, come on, come on, then I know, hey, it's time to put on the timer. And in those instances, I would then actually use the timer also in the afternoon. So for the evening routine, we always set the timer for our 6-year-old and our 8-year-old, but we don't really use it for the 3-year-old, and that's really for 2 reasons. So first of all, he has a different bedtime. He goes to bed earlier. And also the other reason is we're doing it together with him. Timers we felt like weren't really necessary yet at that age with him for that particular routine. So it's really about the 6 and the 8-year-old. And the way it works is, so we have for each of them, we have that evening chart, that evening routine that they go through, but we're actually setting the timer twice, even though they only have 1 chart each. And the way it works is basically we have 2 specific times that are kind of unmovable. So the first one is at 8 o'clock, our story time starts. 8 o'clock is always, they know story time starts, and 8:30 is lights out. So they have half an hour of story time. So, you know, depending the day, it doesn't always work the same, but let's say we are going upstairs at around like 7:15. So we would look at the time and then, you know, set 45 minutes, set the timer for 45 minutes. So they have 45 minutes till 8 o'clock to get ready to do everything on their chart right onto that little book, the reading time, the story time. And they know once the timer goes off, that is when story time starts. And then we would set the timer again for half an hour of story time. And they know when that timer goes off, story time is over and lights out. And so the interesting thing with that, or why that really works for us, is they want their story time. I mean, that is kind of the motivator for them, right? And they also know is when the 45 minutes, in that case, when that timer rings the first time, they know we'll start story time, no matter where they are in the process. So that might mean they are cutting into their story time, right? So this goes again back to those natural consequences. Hey, you're not ready yet, you're not dressed yet, so I need to set the timer now for the story time. Our next 30 minutes are starting. So the longer you take to get dressed, the less time you have actually for that story time. And that tends to be a really good motivator, especially for the 6-year-old. Sometimes the 8-year-old could be a hit or miss depending how engrossed he is in something. But that is definitely a very great way of using timers in the evening. So this is really how we're using timers in our house, and we experimented with different ways, but that is the best way how that works for us in combination with those routine charts. So a couple of reality checks I'd like to say are kind of fun facts to note. So the first one is, it's really important that at the beginning when you introduce these routine charts and the time and all of that, that you really take your time explaining it, have them ideally explain it back to you to really make sure that they understood how it works, and do so slowly, even if you have to repeat it a couple of days, but kind of slowly really guide them and explain to them how it works. And so the other thing I would recommend is actually that you let them set the timer, right? So going back to kind of really that engagement, having them be part of the process and them not so much feeling that they are being controlled all the time, but they are really part of it. So for example, when you go upstairs, time for bed, 30 minutes left before story time, let them actually move the dial to set the 30 minutes. And then as you kind of go through the process with the timer and the routine charts, what I recommend is kind of also depending on the age of the child, but it's like refer back to it really at the beginning a lot. Kind of be like, hey, what does your chart say to do next? Or, hey, look at the timer. Do you still have a lot of time left? Or, what do you think you need to do next? Look at the timer, it's moving. So kind of really get them trained to look at these two pieces, the chart as well as the timer, so that they learn over time really to get a sense of time and learn to manage themselves. Another thing that is really critical, I think, is to keep it light and fun. So for example, sometimes, especially in that doing that afternoon routine when they get really silly, I would ask them, hey, should I set it for 5 minutes or should I set it for 7 minutes? How fast do you guys think you can get it done? And kind of make it more of a game. So whenever you find ways of doing it that way, I think that makes it also much easier for them to kind of just get it done and follow along. And lastly, I would really recommend keep in mind kind of who your child is, how they are at different times of day, their age, keep that in mind so that you have the right expectations. And always remember, what is the goal of this all? The goal is really to teach them about cooperation, having them wanting to cooperate, and teaching them over time how to become more and more self-sufficient. And this can take a while. It requires a lot of patience and stamina, but really for us stoic mamas, that's a great tool to really kind of get a little bit, decrease the stress level as we're going throughout our days with our little ones. All right, thanks everyone for watching. I hope this was helpful. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, please let me know in the comments. I'll post the links to the videos I mentioned, to my Etsy shop. I also will post a link to that timer I showed you if you want to check it out. And if you like what you see here, please consider subscribing to the Stoic Mama and stay in the know about other life hacks for modern day parenting. Thanks, bye!